Joining me now on Digest is Andrea Clemens, who's a 1985 Norwood graduate, best-selling author. Well, I don't know, is it best-selling? But author of Invisible Target.
Yeah.
And she's here to tell us about the book, about her life. And first of all, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you.
So now you live in Florida now, and you like the warmth rather than the cold here.
Nothing against Norwood or New England. I grew up here, I love it, but it's so much easier in Florida.
So this is a subject
beautiful.
that's a lot heavier than what we usually deal with on Norwood Digest.
Okay.
It's about educator sexual abuse. How big of a problem is that?
It's such a large problem, and people underestimate it, I think. That's been my experience. Nearly 1 in 10 students will experience some form of sexual misconduct by a school employee by his or her senior year.
Wow.
It's almost 4.5 million children. That is an epidemic. And I think people are starting to hear increased news, increased arrests by teachers, arrests of teachers, and the media is covering it more. But I don't think they're connecting the dots that it's a systemic problem. And it's very important that I let people know the vast majority of teachers are nothing but phenomenal.
Right.
They're wonderful. But what we need to do is educate all these wonderful teachers on how to spot the abusive ones and what to do. And that's my mission. That's why I'm here.
So it's a very interesting title, Invisible Target. And as you get into your story, and maybe we'll start.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell us how you chose that title.
I know it's an interesting one. The whole point of writing it was not just to write a memoir. I wanted to really educate people through the lessons that I learned kind of the hard way.
Right.
So others. And one of the things that surprised me was that a lot of times predatory teachers target certain kids for the great majority of the time. And I was a classic textbook case of someone who was easily targeted, very vulnerable in a lot of different ways. And a lot of times there's sort of a misconception, I think, with some people about if kids dress provocatively or that somehow the student had a part in it. And it's most often the other way around, where it's the invisible ones who need a role model, who need to feel special, who want to be noticed and included, and they feel invisible. A lot of times I liken it to a lion stalking its prey. And they're not going to go for one of the animals in the front of the pack, where they're strong and they're visible and they're going to tell. They're going to, well, not the animal's going to tell. The analogy got mixed in. They're going to go the ones in the back of the pack that are weaker, that are quieter, that won't necessarily be missed if they're missed. And so that was why I needed to combine the invisible target, and that's why it just described me perfectly back then.
So how did it all start?
So it started, back then, the middle school was the junior high, and it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So by the time I entered 9th grade, a little snapshot on me, I grew up in a very chaotic, abusive household, very, very much. And so when I met this teacher, Mr. Baker, in 9th grade, I was very depressed, I was suicidal at times, lost, I had no self-esteem. And I think the most important thing for people to understand is I was just longing for a father figure. I just wanted to feel special somewhere, and I didn't. So that was me. Mr. Baker was 18 years older than I was. He was married. He was a science teacher. He was the JV baseball coach. He certainly didn't have any disciplinary actions against him. He was just this really fun, cool teacher that a lot of kids enjoyed hanging out with. There would be a lot of students that had formerly, had him in class. They'd come back and visit him during class time, and we all just wanted to be one of them. And so I just saw him as somebody who mattered, and I wanted to be in the inner circle so much. So he started to befriend me in 9th grade, and I gradually would have lunch in his classroom, sometimes with other kids and sometimes alone. And then he started talking to me, and I just could kind of open up finally about problems I was having at home, things like that. And as the year progressed, our conversations got more and more personal, and he would tell me a little bit about his personal life, but he just helped me open up so much. And I felt like I was getting this friendship.
Right.
That I was so lonely. I was so thankful for it. And he started talking, we would talk on the phone at night. He would give me rides home. He started taking me places. He started giving me some presents, things like that. And this was how he was with many, many children. Everyone just knew him as the one who would just reach out. Sometimes to the kids who were needy, but just to the kids in general. So the last day of ninth grade, I went to go see him, and he had a gift for me, and it was this windmill music box. And he had said, I had to get this for you because I've just gotten so attached to you. I'm really going to miss you this summer. And two feelings, I think. One, I was so flattered that anybody would spend time or money getting me a gift. And Mr. Baker getting me a gift, that I felt special, which I'd been seeking for so long. And then the other piece was I felt uncomfortable, but something felt funny. Like this is.
But you didn't know what it was.
But I didn't know what it was. I wasn't raised in a family where you were taught to trust your instincts, your red flag feelings. I never learned that. So I just kind of, brushed that aside. So that's how it all began. Just a friendship that I thought.
Right.
Looking back, it's not appropriate for teachers to give gifts to students. It's not appropriate for them to carry on this kind of relationship type feeling or connection outside of the classroom. It's not appropriate for teachers to give kids rides home. This was also 1980, 81. Very different time than now.
Right.
But in the time, all I knew was I was grateful, So I moved on to the high school, but just about every day I would take a school bus back to the junior high to go visit him. And so that whole year, it became very emotionally intense. And his behavior started to change. He started to talk to me in a different way than he had before, where he told me that he could talk to me in a way he couldn't talk to other people, other adults. That I was mature way beyond my years, things like that. And I believed everything he said. Why wouldn't I?
Right.
This was Mr. Baker. This power differential never went away. Never went away. He was my teacher for the first year, but he was always Mr. Baker to me. And so he started opening up about things about his marriage. There was a lot, and I started feeling better and better. So 9th and 10th grade was, this whole building up period. And then the beginning of my junior year, my mom had gone to the school to talk to him, and I didn't realize this. And she said she was very grateful for, he had obviously helped me.
Right.
And was like a father figure, but she wanted him to back off a little because it was becoming strange. She really didn't understand. Back then, you didn't hear anything of it.
Right. But she just
she
inherently
knew something
was up.
something just wasn't right, and she was afraid I was going to get hurt somehow.
Yeah.
And he just reassured her he had no bad intentions, and of course I would never do anything like that. And so I went to visit him that day after school, and it was strange. It was different because he had 2 pieces of yellow lined paper with notes on both sides, and he was emotional and very upset. And he said, "Look, your mom came to see me today," and I was so upset. Like, how this is my best friend. He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't crossed any line in my mind.
Sure.
How can she do this? And he just said, "Look, I guess we should abide by her wishes, but I don't think I can because I've become too attached to you, and I don't think I can live without you." And so it was the conflicted
how old
feelings. I was about 15.
Yeah.
15 years old, riding a school bus.
Right.
This guy's 33 years old or whatever, and I was so confused because I was so flattered. I couldn't believe anyone, never mind cool Mr. Baker, could feel that way about me. And also something felt very wrong.
Right.
I don't think he's supposed to feel this way, but what I had found was I was no longer depressed. I wasn't suicidal. All I knew is I needed him too much. So the need outweighed any uncomfortable feelings or fear, and nothing was going to stop me from losing that feeling. So that was the point in my mind when the line got crossed. Now, what's important, and what I want people, if you're listening, to realize is the first 2 years, there was no physical line crossing, no sexual abuse yet, anything like that. That's what's known as a grooming period. It's really important for people to understand that there's a grooming process that most predators employ. A lot of times we'll hear about a story in the news, and all you hear is the end product of what happened when they got caught.
Right.
But you don't understand how it happens. And most of the time, a teacher's not just going to all of a sudden kiss a student or take them in the car and do something to them that you hear about. So this is the part, I wrote a whole chapter about grooming because I think this is when we can intervene.
Right.
Okay?
So let me intervene right here.
Intervene,
Because,
yes. Okay.
the way you have the book set up, at the end of the chapters, there's questions that you ask, and the questions that you would ask of a person reading who's an educator,
Yes.
a parent, or a student. So what are the questions, like at this point in time,
Right.
what are the questions, what should people be concerned about?
Okay, wonderful question. We need to look for patterns, okay? You don't want to be paranoid about every single thing. patterns of behaviors. If they're spending time alone with kids, if they're giving them gifts, are they giving them rides home? Now there's a whole other dynamic of technology that we didn't have to worry about back then. Texting, Facebook, any social media. And are they spending time outside of the classroom? You know, he would give me passes to get out of a class, and I would go and sit with him. And we need to educate all these wonderful teachers how to protect themselves, of keeping a door open and letting administration know if you're talking to a student after school. And it's a shame we have to do that,
right.
But we do. But the abusive ones it's all about gaining access. And technology now gives them so much more easy access. And sometimes it's helpful technology for school purposes,
right.
But these parents need to absolutely know every communication they're having with their teachers. They need to be aware of their passwords, everything. And what was difficult was Mr. Baker was this trusted, revered man. And he was almost above suspicion because this is how he just was. Everyone's response was, oh, that's just, I know. It seems strange, but he's just such a good guy. He gives these kids gifts. And so people were just used to it. And it just whittled down any suspicion. And so as a result, it was very easy for him to have access to me.
Okay.
You know?
So we're going to take a short break, actually.
Okay, all right.
And as I've joined with Andrea Clemens, who's the author of Invisible Target. We've gone up through the grooming period. We'll be back with more.
Shopping local is a great way to support your community. It creates local jobs, it grows small businesses, and provides investment back into your town. Local businesses know their customers and their needs. They define your town and make it uniquely yours.
I bike local.
I refurbish furniture, local.
I Lewisburger local.
I buy flowers, local.
We shawarma local.
I gift local.
I bank local.
I bowl local.
I play local.
I clean local.
I shop local.
I sparkle local.
I frame local.
We run local.
On Saturday, November 29th, you're invited to shop local. Support your neighbors, your friends, and your town. Shop local.
Welcome back. Again, joined by Andrea Clemens, the author of Invisible Target. And we just got through how it started. We got through the grooming period. Mm-hmm. What happened next?
Okay, so just a few weeks after my mother sort of confronted Mr. Baker, he took me to his home. It was right around Christmas time. And his wife had been working, and he had said he wanted me to see his Christmas tree. He wanted to see the colored lights and one white light that blinked. Why I remember this, I have no idea. But those are the strange things that stand out. And so I went there, and back then I was just so curious. I was still such a kid. I was so curious about where he lived and his house. And here's this grown-up. It was like back then teachers didn't wear jeans, and if you saw your teacher out at a store wearing jeans, you couldn't believe it.
Right, yeah.
It was the same dynamic that, again, he was Mr. Baker. So I'm in his house peeking at pictures, and oh my gosh, this is his life outside. It was still so not an equal footing, and that's what I think is so important. And so we were sitting on his couch and talking, and he was sitting behind me, and all of a sudden he put his arms around my waist, and I couldn't breathe. I really just went into a panic because I had never been touched like that. I was this young, innocent kid, and he said, like, there's something I need to tell you, and you don't have to respond or anything, but I've somehow fallen in love with you. And you don't have to say anything, but I feel you deserve to know. And it was the same thing as the other examples that I gave you of these absolutely conflicting emotions of how could anyone love me? How could Mr. Baker love me? And this is very wrong. What do I do? And I couldn't respond, and I was scared. At that point, I was frightened.
Yeah.
I was. I was in over my head. But the most important thing for people to know is it doesn't matter because he's an authority figure. And so I was taught to trust him, taught to obey, and so he loved me. Okay, he has to love me, and I don't know what to do next. So we went to the door, and before we left, he just turned around and kissed me. It was one kiss, and terrified and flattered and confused. And I remember a little sadness too, and I never really knew why, but there was this sadness there mixed up with excitement.
And
you
it
know,
was
when you're 15, 16 anyway, you're
Yeah.
gonna feel it. But now it's with this teacher, who's
Right.
18 years older and married in his home. It was a mess. And so we went to his car, and he was driving me home. And the two important things that he said during that ride, one was, you can't tell anybody about this. And he had never said anything like that before. And he just said, look, no one's going to understand. This is very special. And I could get fired for this, and I'll go to jail, and that'll be your fault. I'll kill myself if that happens, and that'll be your fault. I don't want that responsibility on your shoulders. So
this is the blackmail part, if you will.
this is absolutely the tool
Right.
that linked me to secrecy and silence, and I 100% took that responsibility, and it took me years to let go of it. I would never want anything to happen to him, even if he was doing something that was abusive or wrong or scary. That was secondary to how much I needed him and how much I revered him. So the whole time I remember looking out the side view mirrors, looking for police, but thinking I just did something illegal, that I kissed him.
Right.
I really thought it was I did something bad.
Yeah, so he was able to turn that on you.
Absolutely. He's like, you just kissed me. You can't do that. You'll put me in jail. And he repeated that many times. The other piece that was very significant once he said, now, it was like a declaration, okay, this is going sexual. Because he just said, I want to take things at your pace. I want this to be a great experience. We'll take this at a slow pace. I don't want you to be uncomfortable with anything. Whatever you're comfortable with is fine. And what I thought at the time was, what a nice guy. I honestly thought, it was relief. Okay, he's not going to expect me to do these grown-up things I haven't even heard of yet. I knew there were things I didn't even know what existed. And I honestly thought at the time, I am so lucky that I know there are other girls that wish they were me right now. It's so hard for me to even say those words.
Yeah, but that's what it was.
That's where I was at the time, this young, impressionable kid. And that was the point. But there was 2 years until that build-up point. And by then I was hooked.
Right.
And so up until then, he really, that last year had built me up so much. He said the kindest things, that he thought I was pretty, that I was smart, that I could do anything in the world, and I believed him. I had never heard those things before, so I believed him. As soon as he crossed that line, he started just tearing me down, and the control he had over me increased so much, very, very much. The people I talked to who remember me back then, I was very rigid. I had to be at certain phone booths back then had an incoming phone number you could call, and I would need to be waiting at the phone booth at the high school in the morning before classes start for him to call me. And if I wasn't there, he was sure that I was with some boy.
Yeah.
And so the control would increase. And in terms of the sexual abuse, that slow pacing went out the window. And I found myself in these abandoned parking lots with him in the car, at his brother's apartment, all these places, and I was so afraid. But I was too afraid to say no.
Right.
I didn't know how to say no. I had no voice for that. And I just remember being really confused. I didn't know how I got to that place. I was very confused of, wait a minute, what happened? What happened to this nice guy? And he started tearing me down emotionally, too. He just started saying, I really don't think you should go to college because I don't think you can handle those math classes. You should just stay home. I'm going to leave my wife soon. I'll take care of you. He didn't want me to branch out anywhere.
Yeah.
He didn't want to lose his control over me. So as high school progressed, I started to want to pull away, and I didn't know how.
But you were able. You did go to college.
I did.
And where did you go?
I did. I went to Bridgewater State.
And you lived there, right?
I lived at the dorms, and I came home every single weekend to work at Brigham's.
Yeah,
downtown North.
I remember Brigham's.
Yeah, best vanilla ice cream.
Yeah,
and stuff.
have some in my freezer right now.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I'm in Florida. We can't get it. It's very sad. And I would come home, and I would only see him on maybe a Sunday afternoon or something, but I'd be home so that I could see him, and I was resenting it more and more and more. And there's a lot of people who have a very difficult time understanding, well, once you're out of high school, how is it abuse anymore? You're in college, then you're an adult, you're over 18, and there's a lot of dynamics I explain in the book.
Right.
Because I tried to leave him about 7 times. And I was going to therapy to try to leave him. And I was when I say his control increased, he would threaten me. He would say, I could bury you. I know where you are all the time. He knew everything about me. And I believed that he could bury me. And he did a really strange thing where he had these Mountain Dew bottles, 2-liter plastic bottles of Mountain Dew, on the floor by the fridge. And one day, I was just being goofy. I picked one up and I took a huge swig, and I got this burning, horrible reaction, and I got so sick. And he said, "What are you doing?" I put antifreeze in there. Why would anyone put antifreeze in that? And I was so sick. I ran upstairs crying in the bathroom, and I was sick. And he didn't even come. He just sat downstairs. And it was those. There were so many little examples of where I would try to exert some adult voice, and he would squish me down quickly. So it took me years to leave this man.
Right. And
Yes.
now reading the book, I thought it was amazing that you were able to break away, not totally, but to go down and work at Disney World. Mm-hmm. So how'd that happen?
There, it's funny when I look back. There was as afraid of him as I was, and as controlled as I was. There was always this healthy part inside of me, this healthy voice, way in the back, saying, "You need to go do this." That would just give me the courage to just push on, like going to college, going to graduate school. And there was this opportunity to do a college internship at Disney World. Who would not want to do that? I
Right.
get college credit and go down to Disney. And it's hard to explain without going into a whole chapter, but all my college roommates were wonderful. They were like, "Andrea, you need to do this." And by then I had let them know
Yeah.
that I was with him, but I don't think I told anybody for a long time when it began. So no one understood this strange relationship with this guy because I couldn't tell the truth, And so I went to the interview, and I got offered the internship, and it was an extended one. It was like 8 months because we were opening the MGM studios at the time. And I just knew I had to go, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then I just kind of got the courage up. I think we were at dinner, and I told him about it, and he was so furious with me. Like, "How could you do this to me? You're abandoning me. How dare you?" And it was just a lot of tears and yelling and screaming and silence. But I went anyway, and it was one of the best times of my life. I certainly never regretted it.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people always say it's like, spousal abuse. Why don't you just leave him? It's just not
Yes.
that easy.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
And it's funny because now, if I were in this situation, if somebody looks at me the wrong way, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. I've learned. Back then, I was trying to leave as a 14-year-old.
Right.
I had never become an adult with an adult voice. I was raised in a home where I had no voice. I just had continued that situation, and I believed he had all that power over me. And when you're in that position and you're isolated, the fear is too great, and you become paralyzed. And that's why I try so hard to empower people now. And it's when the pain outweighs the fear that you can move.
So you had a lot of therapy going on.
Yes.
And what was the breakthrough? What made you
The
do it?
breakthrough was I went to a group for sexual abuse survivors, and we had to name our abuser. And I was sitting around these wonderful, amazing, strong women, and it was something. I think I was just ready. I had been going for 4 years to therapy with this wonderful therapist, but the power of a group, you can't underestimate it. And I finally just said, I think I have to name my boyfriend as my abuser. And when I finally reframed that he wasn't just this weird, mean boyfriend, that he sexually abused me when I was a kid. And I felt like I had the right to leave. And I didn't feel like I had the right before enough. And that I kept using excuses like, I wanted to leave you because I'm not, you're married and this isn't. And so I finally, it was a 15-week group. And my whole goal, everyone had different goals. And mine was just to be able to have the strength to tell them I wasn't happy. Which to me now sounds pathetic in terms of like what a simple thing to say now. But that's how powerless I had felt, that I couldn't even tell them the truth. Honesty and truth was the key for me in everything in my life, and I didn't even know it. And once I embraced speaking out and being honest, everything fell in place. And it was not easy at all. I think there was a reason it took that long, because it took every bit of strength and resources and support to leave him. It was ugly. That's why I ended up moving to Florida, because he had been stalking me, leaving 27 messages on my voicemail, being outside of work, just lots of things that I could never shake that feeling. And so that's why I ended up, when I finally left, about a year later, I relocated to Florida, and I didn't look back.
Yeah. And so, at any time there, did it occur to you that this guy did something illegal, and I should report him to the authorities? So that.
Great point. And no, I didn't. I just couldn't believe I survived. I was just so thankful it was over, that I didn't want to look back. That's truly where I was. Like, oh my God, I was in my 20s. I was like 24, 25 years old, free for the first time in my life. So I lived that new life in every way you can, good, bad, and ugly, and just moved on. Just let go. And I just spent so much effort trying to kind of cleanse myself.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think about that was illegal or it was just this bizarre thing that I went through that no one else in the world would ever go through.
So you
That's
thought.
what you think. You think you're alone in this
Yeah.
world, and you're not. And so I was having dinner with a friend years and years later, and we were talking about the whole Mr. Baker ordeal. And she just asked, you know, I was talking and I was feeling very healthy and strong. I said, there's so much in the news about, you know, these teachers having affairs with students, and it makes me crazy because a teacher cannot have an affair with a student. Two adults
Right.
can have affairs. When there's a teacher, there's a power differential. I don't even care if it's what age. I don't care what gender. That's a whole other
Right.
double standard. That'll be a 5-hour show. but I don't care the gender of the teacher, the gender of the student. I don't care the ages. That's a power differential that's undeniable, and that boundary can't be crossed. And it's not an affair, and it's not a relationship. It is abuse.
Right.
And I was going on and feeling very strong and proud, and she proceeded to ask me a question, this friend of mine at dinner, that stopped me in my tracks. And she said, "Is he still teaching?" I said, "Yeah, I think so. Why?" She said, "Do you think he would ever do this again?" And I said, "No, there's no way. He's not that stupid. This lasted a long time. He was devastated when I left. It's not like that, you know."
Yeah.
And she just kind of looked at me and she looked out the window. And I left, and for a week that bubbled in my head of what if he did this again? And I never told anyone. And it was like this huge light just dawned on me saying, I have to tell somebody. So it took me a month. It took me so long, every possible scenario, because he still had in the back of my head this scary power over me, you know?
Right. And somehow you were responsible for it.
I still felt a little bit like
Yeah.
I had done something wrong. And so I finally said, okay, this is it. So I contacted the principal that had been principal when I was there, and I called him up, and I said, look, one of your teachers who's still teaching molested me back in middle school, and I just want to make sure your kids are safe. I didn't know what to do. I didn't
Right.
call the police because it had been years. Statute of limitations had passed. So I thought, well, they can't do anything. They can't arrest him. Why would I call the police? I'm going to tell him. And so he asked me to identify myself. And when I said who I was, he said, oh my gosh, I remember you. And then he said, it was Bob Baker, wasn't it? And I was shocked. I said, how did you know that? And he's like, I don't know, he spent so much time with you. I mean, he spent a lot of time with a lot of kids, but you were really special to him. Oh my God, did he abuse you? Those were the exact words. And I said, yeah, and it lasted for years. And so we questions and answers for about 30 minutes. And then, you know, he just said, what do you want me to do? How can I help? I'm like, I don't know, you're in
You're
charge.
the teacher,
you know,
you
you're the
figure out.
principal. So I said, I just want to make sure that your kids are safe. Anything I can do to help, great. So we hung up. I felt like Wonder Woman, like I've done my piece, my work is done here, you know?
Right.
Because what else could I do? I thought. 8 months later, I got contacted by NORAD detectives. I got a voicemail saying, we have somebody, we're working on a case, and we think you can help. And I got that voicemail, and the rug, you know, was pulled out from under
Sure.
me, saying, wait a minute, the police are, what? Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. And I knew in my head I wasn't,
But still.
but that old kid in me,
Yeah.
I'm going to jail. That's still how present it was. So I called him back, and he was relieved to hear from me, and I was confused. He's like, look, are you aware of a Robert Baker? And I just closed my eyes. I said, yes. And he said, we have him in custody. And I was so confused. I said, okay, I haven't given a statement or anything. I don't understand. Well, you know, and he said, no, he's in custody for statutory rape of 2 14-year-old girls. And I can't think of anything more devastating to hear.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe he did it again. Other people later on said they aren't shocked. But when you're in it, you just, I couldn't believe he repeated the same actions, and that it wasn't just this special, unique thing.
Right.
So I drove.
So let's stop here.
Sorry.
We'll take
Yes.
a short break again because
Okay.
we seem to have reached a point where it makes sense to
Perfect.
stop.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Andrea Clemens, author of Invisible Target. welcome back. Again, I'm joined by Andrea Clemens, author of Invisible Target. Now, we've gotten to the point where the abuser is now in custody and he's probably ready to go to court. So let's pick it up from there.
Okay. So I drove to Massachusetts and gave a 3-hour statement to two of the detectives about everything that I could remember, which was pretty powerful, that I was actually talking to police about this. And what was interesting was the whole time, two things that they said that were significant. While I was giving my statement to them, they kept looking at each other and just shaking their heads. And at the end I said, okay, tell me, what's that about? And they just said, your stories are identical. The girl's stories and your story, he took them to the same places. He gave them the same kind of gifts. He made the same kind of threats. He did the same kind of sexual acts. It was so similar, years and years and years apart. The other thing that was troubling to hear was this broke out in like 2002. And so it was in the news, it was on TV, it was in the newspapers. And initially it really seemed like people weren't necessarily believing these girls. They were questioning the validity of it, and a lot of people are concerned about false accusations. And the newspaper articles had a slant, in favor of it because, again, 31-year veteran, no disciplinary actions, okay? It's every time I hear a news report and they say, oh, he's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
Kids are drawn to nice guys. They're not drawn to people who are these scary monsters we think are the abusers. And so what a lot of people questioned them at first, but then when they heard a third former student was coming forward, when these police were interviewing former teachers that I had that are still there that knew him, they all named me. So many of them said, oh, that third one was Andrea, wasn't it? Somewhere inside they all knew. They all knew that something was awry, but they didn't have the skills. They were equipped to recognize the warning signs that we talked about with the grooming. And what do you do with a colleague that you respect?
Right. Plus, they didn't want to believe it to be true.
You don't want to believe that. You don't want to get your colleague in trouble. You don't want to think that someone's capable of something like that. But they knew something was off, and they didn't know what to do. So that was, it was just a very interesting experience. So he had been saying he was innocent, and when he heard that I was cooperating, he did a plea bargain. And so I went to court, and I went into the courtroom, and the girls were sitting in front of me. And what was interesting, I was looking at them, and I noticed that we all looked alike.
Oh, wow.
So weird. We all had straight brown hair, brown eyes, and I just looked and oh, they're so young, because they're still in high school. And that's when it hit me that that's how young I was. I was riding a school bus while this guy was taking me into an abandoned parking lot and having sex with me when I didn't want to.
Right.
All of this, and that's the moment. That's what it took for me to release the responsibility and the shame, which was very significant. That's what allowed me to move forward the most and start speaking out, was releasing the shame that should have been assigned to him and his secret.
No, and if I remember, you built up a relationship with one of the girls or both of them?
No, both of them. It was amazing. And what I didn't understand at first, and I quickly understood, was these girls were not happy to know that I existed.
Right.
Because they too felt special. What do you mean he did this before? They didn't want anything to do with me. They were so traumatized anyway. And so I spoke with them a little bit after court, and I gave one of them my contact information and said, I understand if you never want to see me again or talk, I understand, but I am the only person in this world that knows what you just went through, if you ever need anything. And she contacted me that night with this amazing email. And the three of us got together that following Saturday and talked for 4 hours. And we all stayed in touch. And we ended up just healing each other in ways nothing else can.
Right.
That's why you need to find your people.
Yes.
That go through the same thing. I think there's nothing like it. And we stayed in touch. And then I got to see them go through college decisions and dating and careers. And I was in one of their, I was a bridesmaid in one of their weddings a few years ago, which was unexpected beauty and pleasure, So that's been, it's been so powerful, very powerful, yeah.
And so, why'd you write the book?
Initially, I wrote it just to get it out of me. I'm I need to write this down and make sense of it all. But as I was writing, it was so clear it really wasn't for me. I did a lot of research as I was writing it about how prevalent the problem is, and how I'm trying to think of the right word. How much a lack of training there is. Yeah. For parents and teachers and administrators on this problem. And it's for a long time, it's a big Pandora's box. Do not open this. It's happening. but schools just needed some guidance,
Right.
so much. And I wanted to share the lessons I learned. I learned the hard way so other people don't have to. So it was important. So like you mentioned, at the end of every chapter I have a section called Consider This, with just thought-provoking scenario-type questions designed to engage the readers in discussion. And what I'm excited about is that I didn't realize a lot of people are sharing the book with others. A lot of book clubs are reading it. A few people have given the copy to their superintendent. And one town, a town nearby, the superintendent bought a copy for all the principals. I get so excited about that because we have to talk about this. It's happening. It's not going to go away because we don't talk about it, you know?
So when I read the book, one of the just aspect of it that just totally took me by surprise was the whole grooming thing. We touched on it a little.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little more, but talk about it in the, like I'm a parent of two daughters. They're out of high school. They're both in college. But
Yeah.
what would I be looking for? And then what should the kids be looking for? What's the warning signs that should go out for that?
It's a great question. And part of it, I'm going to backtrack a little bit
Sure.
to answer this. I think what's most important is prevention education for kids at a really young age. I think we need to train our kids. I work for an organization called Kids Safe down in Florida. And we teach just safety life skills for kids, but starting at age 4. We can't start the conversation when they're 14. Like a lot of people ask me, like, well, how can we teach our middle school kids? Not that it's too late, but it's too late. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
if
do.
you're starting the conversation then, so many things are ingrained, and they're already their personalities are set, and they're either looking to belong somewhere or they're not. And so, if we start teaching kids really young, like we have a book called "My Body is Special and Belongs to Me." How wonderful is that? And just who are your circle of safe adults, and check first, and things like that, and how to keep them safe, and to talk to a grown-up who will believe you. And if you have an unsafe touch, what is that? And to trust your instincts. That would have helped me so much so long ago. But along with that, what's important is we also have a parent seminar, and we have a teacher workshop. And I think it's the 3-tiered approach is critical in teaching everyone the warning signs of the grooming, of what to look for. And it's not just teachers, it's not just educators. It's 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually exploited by the time they're 18.
Wow.
It's devastating. And guaranteed that's not accurate, because so much goes underreported. And so anyone who has access to children will have this opportunity to abuse a child. And we need to train not just the kids. It's not fair to just play some of the kids, but they need to understand this is an okay touch, this is not an okay touch. Secrets versus surprises, things like that. And all the grooming that can happen, that adults are not your friends. And that's problematic,
Right.
because it can be confusing because there's so many wonderful adults, but you can be a mentor, but you're not their friend. And parents need to learn that. They need to learn if a babysitter or a mentor or a bus driver or a coach or a priest or a Cub Scout leader, all of these adults that have access to kids. We always joke, like, if they want to spend more time with your kids than you do, there's a problem.
Right.
Okay? Right? And so there's just, again, we have to look for patterns. And we can't place the responsibility on the kids, but we can empower them to give them a voice. And if as adults and the teachers, in terms of the educator abuse, the wonderful teachers need a training. I believe every school system needs training on what to look for. And then what do you do?
Right.
Because what's really important is, like in the state of Florida, every adult is a mandated reporter, not just a teacher, every adult. And so certainly teachers, social workers, they're all mandated reporters. And there's such a fear of, there's a fear of false allegations. I want people to make sure they know that, I'm gonna talk directly here. When you're a mandated reporter, you just have a responsibility to report any suspicion of neglect or abuse. You are not a detective. There is no burden of proof. Because that's what people get caught up in. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm gonna ruin this person's life? Which is a valid concern. There is such a protocol that is followed once a report is made, that someone's not going to get fired. To the contrary, most of the time they don't get fired.
Right.
Okay, there's a lot that needs to happen, but an expert. I quoted an expert in my book. She did all this research. Cheryl Shakeshaft, she's amazing, and she interviewed so many teachers about why they wouldn't report. And they said, "What if I ruined the life of my colleague?" Not once did anyone say, "What if I didn't report and I ruined the life of a child?" And I think we have to keep that in mind. And so many people, without bad intentions, so many people missed it in my situation.
Right.
And I have gotten so many emails since the book came out, and former classmates just apologizing and just asking for forgiveness. And I'm not bashing anybody.
Right.
I'm using it all as lessons and tools to share with others. But so many teachers of mine have reached out saying, I am so sorry. I wish I knew. I had a feeling. I wish I came forward. I just didn't have the training. And so that's why I'm on this mission now, to just educate as many people that will listen so we can protect our kids.
That's great. So earlier you said something about a chaotic upbringing. Mm-hmm. So in the book you talk about your mother a lot and how your relationship changed. And but what was their reaction? I mean, going through it, she had a misgiving, so she talked to him. But when you actually told her what went on,
when I disclosed that I was with him, I have to remember. She always, I think, had suspicions, but I was so good at being deceptive. I had been taught to just be very adept at deceiving her, which is very sad. You know, it was like a survival thing for me. So I think she always had a suspicion, and initially her reaction was, because I was in my 20s. She's like, well, as long as you're happy now, which she didn't know what to do. It took her time to process, and I'm like, but I'm not happy. And so I think she had so many emotions to sort through. I don't think she knew what to do for a very long time. Right. She's heartbroken over the whole thing. She did the best she could with the tools she had growing up. She was dealing with conflict wasn't her best skill. Right. Like a lot of people in that era and that generation, I think they just weren't prepared for things that you needed to really directly address. She always said she was ill-equipped, and so she loved us fiercely. She didn't know how to protect us in certain ways. And so it all makes her very sad. It's hard for her. I think she's glad that I'm speaking out, but it's hard to watch her have a hard time with it.
Sure.
But that's her experience, and I'm not taking. I didn't write it for my family. That was the hardest part to overcome writing it. Was wondering how are people going to react in my family.
Right.
They don't know a lot of this, and it's been painful, but I feel solid in that this is my purpose now. So.
Well, when I read the book, after I finished it, I was angry at first, because it's disturbing, it's disheartening. But the more I thought about it, it's actually a message of hope, that you can overcome this. And, you...
Sorry, now I can talk about it. Now I'm going to cry.
But you have the courage to do it.
That's
and
so sweet.
It took a lot. I mean, if it was easy, you would have done it a long time ago.
And thank you for that. That was very sweet. It's all a journey. We're all on our own journey. You can't tell anybody when to do what they need to do to become free or speak out. I encourage everyone to speak out when they can. I think it's funny because a lot of people have said, this is brave to talk about it. And I say thank you. I understand. But I've been on this kick lately of saying this shouldn't have to be brave. This shouldn't have to be considered that because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
That this is his shame and his secret. And if I had my car stolen, my keys were just laying there and someone stole my car and just, had cigarette burns in it, changed my stations, which actually happened to me. I was a dummy, left my keys out at the gym one time. Someone stole my car and I got it back 2 weeks later, all battered and bruised, and we called it the Dentmobile for 4 more years. And so if I went around talking about my car got stolen and I felt violated because there were cigarette burns, they changed my radio stations, I want to teach you how to never get your car stolen or make sure your kids don't get their car stolen. And we can look for some things to do ourselves to protect them. They were like, oh, that was emotional, but they wouldn't feel like it's that brave.
Right.
Because there's no shame attached. It's just something that was stolen from me. And that's completely how I see this. And that's what I want to encourage other people to realize. Like as an adult, if you make bad decisions, you can have shame about that, and learn from it. But as a kid, it's absolutely something that's done to you.
Right.
And you have the right to speak out and say whatever you are and not own that shame or secrecy.
Wow.
So.
Well, I'm so happy that we were able to spend some time together.
Me too.
Now, just if you want to talk about your organization and what's going on, anything else that you want to...
I want to thank you for the opportunity. And I know this isn't an easy topic. It's very interesting how it's received. And I'm always grateful to have the opportunity to just share, and hopefully people will talk about it, share the program, or let people know about it, because it can only help if we talk. So, Kids Safe Foundation, it's kidssafefoundation.org. Phenomenal. Cherie Ben Joseph and Sally Friedman Behrensweig were the founders for this. And they started in South Florida, and incredibly strong, insightful women who wanted to make this world a safe place for children everywhere. And so we work on the prevention of child sexual abuse, bullying, and internet exploitation. And it's all about prevention education. It's all just communication on an early age, but again, with a three-tiered approach. And so obviously I'm focused in Florida, and they've been in South Florida, and I'm branching it out to Central Florida. But what I'm excited about is the Norwood PTA has approved for me to come and do a giant parent seminar up here.
Oh, great.
Sometime in January, we don't have the date set, and so I'm going to be trying to set up other seminars in other surrounding towns that week to just take advantage of being up here. So the child portion of it, it's an 8-week curriculum in the school. It's wonderful. It's 30 minutes a week, once a week for 8 weeks. That I could not do up here, but it might encourage somebody else to start something.
Right.
That we teach kids about like stranger danger all the time. Okay, we talk about that easy because that's easier to talk about, right? 90% of the time someone's abused, it's by somebody they know.
Right. Yeah, because they have to earn the trust.
Yes, and they need they do the grooming and the access,
Right.
and so that's why we stop, drop, and roll. Down south we do tornado drills and everything, but we don't teach this basic skill that we need to teach. So I encourage everyone to try and seek out that kind of training everywhere, and I really encourage school systems to take the chance and have a 1-hour training on educator abuse with their teachers. It can only protect them.
Thank you again for being with us. We
Thank you.
visited with Andrea Clemens, the author of Invisible Target. Hey, where can people get this?
Invisible Target's available on Amazon and Kindle, and I'm excited it actually got into Harvard Bookstore, so if anyone's in the area, that would be awesome if you can pick up a copy. And my website is andreaspeaksout.com, and you can order a copy right off the website right there too. And if you get this book, if you can share it with anyone you can think of, then I've done my job.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thanks for being with us, and that wraps up another edition of Norwood Digest. We thank the great crew at NPA TV. We thank Andrea.
Thank you.
But mostly we thank you at home for allowing us into your living rooms. Good day and keep safe.